Today we are going to find the square of a binomial. You can write the expression a plus b squared as a plus b times a plus b. And you can write a minus b squared as a minus b times a minus b. So we need to square these two binomials. So we could use our horizontal method or the FOIL method to multiply these two binomials. But when you do that, you will see that there is a pattern. So there is a rule for multiplying two binomials that are the same. That would be squaring the binomials. And here is the rule. So I need you to pause the video and you can write down this rule. The rule is the square of a binomial, which states if you have a plus b squared, that is equal to the first term squared plus 2 times the product of the two terms. So a times b plus the second term squared. When you have a minus b squared, that is equal to the first term squared minus 2 times the product of the two terms plus the second term squared. So, looking at my example here, if I have the binomial x plus 7 squared, following my rule, I square the first term. The first term is x, so I square it, x squared. I add 2 times the product of the two terms, so 2 times the product is x, the terms are x and 7, so x times 7, and then I square the last term. So the last term is 7, so I square it. And then when I simplify, x squared, the 2 times 7 is 14x, and then 7 squared is 49. Looking at another example, if I have x minus 7 squared, I'm following this rule right here, which says you square the first term, so x squared. I subtract 2 times the product of the two terms, so minus 2 times the product of the two terms, x and 7, x times 7. And then I add the square of the last term. The last term is 7, and I add it, so plus 7 squared. When I simplify that, I get x squared minus 2 times 7 is 14x plus, and then 7 squared is 49. A little more complicated problem, but you'll see that the rule follows. What I do is, the rule says when I'm subtracting, okay, I take the first term and I square it. So the first term is 4x, so 4x squared. I subtract 2 times the product of the two terms, so there it is, subtract 2 times the product of the two terms, so 4x times 3, and I square the last term. So the last term is a 3, and I square it. So when I simplify it, I have to be careful here. When you are multiplying, or when you have a power, everything inside gets taken to the second power. So 4 to the second power is 16, and x squared is x squared. Then I simplify this. The 2 times 4 is 8, times 3 is 24, times x, and then 3 squared is 9. So if you have not done so, I need you to pause the video and write down this rule. Tomorrow we're going to use this rule to square a binomial. Alright, finding the difference of squares. You can use the horizontal or the FOIL method for finding the product of two binomials, or you can follow the rule. So the product of the sum and difference of the same two terms also produces a pattern. So if I had a plus b times a minus b, if I used my FOIL method, as I just suggested, if you said that would be a times a, which is a squared, then I take my a times b, I'm doing the horizontal method, the a times b, but that's a negative, gives me a negative ab. Then if I take my b times a, I get ab. I just remember order doesn't matter. And then if I take my b times my negative b, I get negative b squared. And then when I simplify, my two middle terms cancel each other out. If I have a minus ab plus ab, they cancel each other out, so I'm just left with a squared minus b squared. This product is called the difference of a square. And you will see that every time you find the difference of a square, this pattern happens. where the two middle terms cancel each other out. So that is our rule. Our rule states the difference of squares, when you have a plus b times a minus b, it's equal to the first term squared minus the second term squared. So pause the video and write down this rule. We'll be using this rule tomorrow. Let's look at an example, though, of what we will be doing tomorrow. If I had x plus 11 times x minus 11, so my rule says I square the first term, so the first terms are x's, so x squared. And then I subtract the square of the second term, that's 11, so I subtract 11 squared. So simplified, I get x squared minus 11 squared is 121. Looking at another example, okay, my first term is x squared, and my rule says that I square it, so here it is, x squared squared. I subtract the second term squared, so the second term is 6, so I square that. When I simplify, remember when you have a power to a power, our rules for exponents says we multiply the power, so 2 times 2 is 4. So it's x to the 4th power minus, and then 6 squared is 36. So, the rule, the difference of the squares, it always looks like it follows this pattern, so that is our rule. A plus b times a minus b is equal to a squared minus b squared. So tomorrow we will practice that rule.